over 2 months ago, I had a poll on my channel as to what horror series I should cover this Halloween, and the overwhelming majority of you picked The Mandela Catalogue by Alex Kister. And little did I know at the time, this poll would lead to me spending 2 months creating what is probably to date one of my most ambitious videos ever made, excluding my short films, although I definitely put a lot more effort into this than some of my short films. In fact, this nearly 4-hour video ended up having a lot more in common with some of my short films than with my typical analysis video of this kind. And so today I wanted to come here and talk to you about the making of this year's Halloween special, which is probably one of my favorite videos that I have made so far on YouTube. Because trust me, there is a lot that went into this project that you don't see when you're watching the actual video. And personally, I love hearing about the creative process of other creators, or even looking behind the scenes at some of my favorite movies. And so if you enjoy that kind of video, then stick around as I talk about the making of my video on the Mandela Catalogue. And obviously, I'm not filming this video on my typical camera setup because later in the video, I will be showing you some of the lenses and the equipment that I used to put this video together, so I needed to use a different camera for this one. And of course, on October 30th, the day that I published the Halloween video, Alex Kister also dropped the latest video in the Mandela Catalogue, Unravelling Part 2. So stick around to the end of the video because I will be talking about Unravelling Part 2 and kind of inserting it into the greater story that we talked about in the Halloween video. And I also have another theory that I came up with while editing the video of the Mandela Catalogue. A little theory I hadn't fully realized at the time, but I think that we have seen Gabriel appear more times in the series than we think. And so stick around to the end as I go over Unravelling Part 2 and kind of introduce you to this theory. I don't know if any other people have talked about it, but I'm going to talk about it. But for now, let's get into the making of what is probably my greatest YouTube video of all time, and that is my Halloween special on the Mandela Catalogue. See, I knew from the very beginning that this was not going to be a typical video in my style. I wanted to go all out for this particular video. And what I mean by that is I wanted to make this video on the Mandela Catalogue look as though it takes place in the universe of the Mandela Catalogue. And so this video would be presented in black and white with an aspect ratio of 4:3. And when we get to the actual editing and post-production of the video, I'll get into more of the specifics of how I did this, because I think that that's really cool, because a lot more went into achieving the look of the video than you might initially think. I also knew that I wanted to have multiple characters in this video, or at the very least have it take place across multiple locations. This is an idea I actually came up with while I was writing the script. I was going over some of the evidence reels from the MCPD, and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if this section was just narrated by like a noir detective or something? And as for my actual writing process, I'm not really going to talk too much about that because that was probably the most boring part, at least in terms of telling you all about it. I basically just rewatched the entire series, pulling my own theories from my own head, and also consulting the Mandela Catalogue wiki if I had any questions. And this writing process took about a month to complete. I have a day job aside from just making videos, so obviously the work was a lot slower than it could have been if I could have just dedicated all of my time into doing this. I also did briefly consider doing a bit where all of the biblical stories and clips from the Beginner's Bible would be narrated by this like pastor character or priest character, but I ended up scrapping the idea because honestly it would probably at the very least be blasphemy adjacent. But if I had gone through with it, I definitely would have given this character some like messed up ending where he succumbs to MAD and you find him in this really brutal scene. But I didn't end up doing it, and honestly it was probably for the best. And of course we have the whiteboard character, who is me, except he has a whiteboard. I really did need a bigger whiteboard for this video, but I genuinely couldn't find one. And I also knew from the very get-go that I wanted the end scene of this video to really put me in the universe of the Mandela Catalogue. And what I mean by that is I just wanted a short film ending to the video in which I get murdered by Gabriel in some brutal fashion. Obviously, this isn't canon to the series. I just wanted to immerse myself in the world that Alex created because I think that his world is really cool. Visually, I was taking, obviously, a lot of inspiration from the Mandela Catalogue, but I was also pulling from another visual inspiration, and that was the Robert Eggers movie, The Lighthouse. And that will come up several times in this video, so just be warned of that. I also had one final thing that I wanted to try for this video, something that really combines all of my interests into one cohesive and really cool looking video. And as a result, I will be ranting a little bit about camera gear in this segment, so you can skip to this timestamp if that's not really interesting for you. Lots of lens talk, but yeah, if you're interested, stick around. See, all of my YouTube videos since that video all these years ago on The Lighthouse have been filmed using this camera lens. This is a 50mm cinema lens. And this lens was made with what is called an EF mount. There we go. Which is a lens mount type specifically made for Canon cameras. Because something I don't really talk about on this channel at all is I'm actually really into photography on the side. It's a really fun hobby of mine, and I've done a couple paid gigs as well. And for the most part, I shoot those using Canon cameras. Not really this lens, but I'm a Canon man when it comes to photography. But I typically shoot all of my YouTube videos, all the YouTube videos that you see, using this Blackmagic cinema camera. And I want to be clear, using a cinema camera to shoot YouTube videos is very excessive. I bought this camera used from a friend of mine to shoot short films on, and so I just already had it. You don't need professional camera equipment to make YouTube videos. I want to be very clear. It's something that I use. But this cinema camera has a different lens mount type than my actual cinema lens. And so years ago I bought an adapter to put on this camera so I can use my Canon lenses on this camera. This is the adapter right here, this black ring right here. And I love the way that this combination of camera and lens has made my videos look over the years. But this year, I wanted to try something new, something I hadn't tried yet, and that I think was very cool. And that is that I filmed the entirety of my video on the Mandela Catalogue using vintage photography lenses. I already mentioned this a little bit earlier and will mention it again several times throughout the video, but one of my huge visual inspirations for this video was The Lighthouse. And one thing that I really love about the cinematography of that film is that they shot it using old Hollywood lenses. And I'm not talking old Hollywood like the Marilyn Monroe era of Hollywood. I'm talking like old Hollywood, 1920s era. And obviously the lenses that I have in my possession are nowhere near that old, but I still think that they achieved a really cool effect. See, a while ago, a friend gifted me this. This is a Canon F1, which is an old film camera that was first developed in the 70s. And with that camera, he gifted me 2 vintage lenses, one of them being the one that's on this camera right now. But the entirety of my Mandela Catalogue video was captured on this, a 28mm FD lens from the 70s. And this was a really cool idea, but it was also my first obstacle in making this video. See, the old Canon lenses use an FD mount, which is obviously not still in use today. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find any lens adapters that would allow me to hook up an FD lens straight to my camera. And so I made a very risky and potentially financially irresponsible decision, and that was to use 2 lens adapters in order to hook it up. Now, doing this can very seriously impact your picture quality, so I don't recommend doing this at all. There's a good chance that when you hook up 2 lens mounts together, your picture will just be blurry and there's nothing you can do about it. But I did risk it, and I think the results speak for themselves. And so to break it down, I was shooting using my cinema camera, which had an MFT to EF adapter on it, but then I also bought an EF to FD adapter that I attached onto this adapter, and only then could I mount this lens onto my camera. And I totally think that it was worth it because the picture looks so unique. There's this natural halation to the picture that I just love. And I'd love to continue using this lens for future projects, maybe ones that are in color, so I can really experiment with this vintage look that I've managed to create. And this seems like as good a place as any to transition into the actual production of the video. And the first stuff I actually did in the production of this video, beyond shooting that very brief teaser trailer over a month ago, was actually done while I was writing the script. You see, spread throughout the short film segment at the end of the video, there are these very uncanny still shots of my house. And I wanted these specific shots to have a really creepy found footage look to them, so those were not captured using my cinema camera. These were still images captured by this guy, the Instax Mini Evo. I know I don't really talk about photography on this channel, but I really do want to make a video on this thing at some point because it's really cool. It's a combination of a digital camera and a photo printer similar to a Polaroid, all within the body of a retro camera. I have had the idea as of recent to make a YouTube channel dedicated to my photography, talking about photography kits that I use and experimenting with little gadgets like this. I just think it would be a really fun other avenue of content creation because, like I said, I don't talk about photography at all on this channel, but I love photography. It's one of my passions. So let me know if you would be interested in that and a video looking at this thing. And the main thing I did to create this spooky effect is I just turned off all the lights in the house and took photos using the flash built into the camera. And of course I edited these photos in Photoshop as well as adding the Intruder 6 into one of the images. I already had a vision for what I wanted this scene to be, and so I took these photos even while I was still writing the video. And of course, this camera was also used to capture the images of me outside the house, one of which is obviously slightly edited, although it would be hilarious if it wasn't edited and I could just do that. And I'll tell you right now, I am never leaking the original for that photo. It is one of the most cursed photos of me to ever exist. And this was also the camera that I used to capture shots of the house that you see in the video. I did my best to recreate the very surreal visual style of Alex and the Mandela Catalogue for these shots. And I think that a digital camera really fit into that style. And then, after a month of writing, I could finally start shooting, a process which took nearly a month in and of itself. And it could have been done way sooner, but my day job made it nearly impossible to get all the shooting done in time. But another roadblock was also my own decision, and that was that I wanted to shoot all of these scenes at night. The bulk of the video was shot in my bedroom, because honestly, I thought it looked way more Mandela Catalogue than the typical background you see behind me right now. And even when I have the curtains drawn in my bedroom, light is constantly pouring into that room during the day. And so I would wait until after sunset to do any of my filming. And this would severely limit the time that I had to shoot, because sometimes I'd have to wake up early for a morning shift, so I would hardly have any time to record at night. Or sometimes I would be given an evening shift and I'd be too exhausted at the end of that to do any shooting that day. But somehow I still managed to record the entire video, obviously, as you know. The first day of shooting was the majority of the video. I was able to shoot everything from the introduction to the end of Volume 4 in one go, except obviously the detective bits, those were shot on a different day. And I knew going into this, obviously, that this was going to be in black and white with a 4:3 aspect ratio, and I was kind of trying to recreate the visual style of The Lighthouse. And another thing that they did for that movie was they shot it on orthochromatic film, which is ultra sensitive to blue tones. See, even if a film is black and white, it will still have different sensitivities to reds, blues, and greens. And being really sensitive to blue tones meant that the actors' faces and skin tones kind of blended into the background, creating this very unique visual look, even though on the surface it's just standard black and white. And this is a look that I wanted to try and emulate. And for those of us who can't afford orthochromatic film and Panavision cameras, you can recreate this look at home using a blue lens filter. And I do have a blue lens filter, but it unfortunately is a little too big for this guy. And so when setting up my equipment in my bedroom, I actually illuminated the scene using blue light. And I also set it off very heavily to one side in order to create contrast on my face. So one half of my face would be illuminated while the other half would be partially shadowed. And this contrast helped to separate me from the background, otherwise I would just blend right into the wall. And another trick I did to sculpt me out of the background was to illuminate the wall behind me. Although another unfortunate side effect of shooting with blue light is that you can hardly tell I was wearing my lucky flannel in the video. And on my second day of filming in that bedroom, I filmed everything from the Easter clips video all the way to the end. I filmed right up until the moment where I get out of my seat to investigate the voice in the house, and then all that you see afterwards was shot 2 days later. And everything on that day was the same, except that I forgot to turn on the light behind me, so I kind of blend into the background a bit, but by this point in the video, you're probably not noticing that. And then the day after shooting my death scene, which there wasn't much that went into that, I just set up my camera and recorded, but the day after doing all of that, I shot all of the detective bits. And there wasn't much different here, but the background of this shot gives me a great opportunity to brag about the fact that this October I bought a turntable. That's right, I'm the guy who collects vinyls now. And here's some WhittyGuy lore for you. The first 2 albums on vinyl I ever bought are After Hours, which is easily my favorite album of all time, and the follow-up to the album, Dawn FM. There's not going to be a quiz at the end of the video, but there's some extra lore for you on the first 2 vinyls I ever bought. And now that Christmas season is around the corner, I kind of want to find an old jazz vinyl that I can start playing. Don't worry, that tangent's over now. And I also thought it'd be really funny if the detective that appeared in the video was the real Johnny Marlowe, a character that I first introduced in one of my favorite short films I've ever made, On That Night, which I wrote and co-directed. I like the idea that this guy moved to Mandela County from Chicago and then signed away his life story to Hollywood, who later made an adaptation of his life that became the short film On That Night. And that's why there's a different guy playing him than who you see in the Mandela Catalogue video. It's definitely a little meta to make an old short film of mine canon to this video, or to the WhittyGuy lore, I guess, but I thought it was kind of fun. And as a side note, at this point, I was running out of time to be able to get the video done in time, because a lot of the shoots were being done weeks apart, and I still had the hard date of October 30th that I wanted this video to be ready by. And so in order to get the video done in time, I was editing the video while I was shooting it. I started editing the first footage that I shot and then just kind of stitched everything else in where it needed to go as I shot it. And of course, with 10 days left until the video was supposed to go up, I had my final day of shooting, which was me at the whiteboard. I point back here because that's the shelf that the whiteboard was on. Obviously, it didn't have all this stuff on it. This was one of my more informal days of shooting, and I feel like it comes across in the video. Thatcher Davis gets a call from Mark's school regarding his absence and visits the house to see what's wrong, and as it turns out, what's wrong is that he's dead. I was literally just watching Wendigoon videos as I would write everything down on the whiteboard, and then I would pause the video, go shoot my thing, and then come right back and write the next thing on the whiteboard. I also filmed this segment during the day because the curtains in my office are a lot better, and so I could get away with shooting during the day and still having it look like I shot at night. And with that, I had shot the entirety of my Mandela Catalogue video, but now I had to edit it. So for that, we're going to transition to my actual editing software. For those of you who don't know, I used to edit in Adobe Premiere Pro until I realized that DaVinci Resolve is way better. I've been using DaVinci for about 2 years now, and I have never looked back. I'm not sponsored by them at all. I just want people to know that DaVinci is a way better editing software. And let me know in the comments if some of you would want a DaVinci Resolve editing tutorial, because honestly, it's been in the back of my mind to make one of those for a while now. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Now, I did eventually do the one-time payment for DaVinci Resolve Studio, the Pro version. But for those looking to edit their own projects, the free version of DaVinci Resolve is perfect for anything you'd need. A lot of the great tools that make DaVinci an amazing editing software are in the free version. It's only a few just convenient effects and menus and stuff that are in the paid version. And I'll be quickly re-editing this raw footage that you see here to kind of show you my process for how I color graded this video, because the color grading is the main interesting part that I want to talk about, but I will be talking about a couple other things. And now you can see what I mean when I said that I shot the video using a blue light. Now, the video I exported was obviously in a 4:3 aspect ratio, but I still wanted it to be a 4K video. And so I calculated the exact pixel dimensions that I would need to have a 4K kind of square looking video. And so these are the pixel dimensions that you would need to make a 4:3 aspect ratio video, but still keep your 4K resolution. So I'm just gonna hit that. And then if you'll see when I make the video full here, there you go. Now, I'm not going to talk about my entire editing workflow in this video because honestly, I think that'd be rather boring. I will, however, be going over some of the effects and the color grading that I did in order to achieve the look that you see in the video. So when I started editing the project, the raw footage just looks like this. You can see it's very desaturated, very low contrast. And this is how cinema cameras shoot their footage, because it's up to the colorist to determine the ultimate look of the video. Now, the first step of my workflow, and this is something that I adopted recently, I learned it off of a YouTube video by someone who's way better at DaVinci Resolve than I am. But that first step is to apply a basic color correction to the picture. And I do this using this tool here, the Color Space Transform tool. So I apply that effect to this node, and I'm actually going to add another node off of that and apply the effect to this one as well. In the first node, I'll be transforming the color space of my actual footage from Blackmagic 4K into DaVinci Wide Gamut. And that's all done using these drop-down menus here. So first I just find this one, Blackmagic Design Pocket 4K, because I shot using the Pocket 4K. And as you can see, this has already dramatically affected the picture. And then here I'm going to pick Blackmagic Design Film 4K as well. And this will change depending on what you're shooting with, whether it's Sony, Canon, Blackmagic. You'll want to change what you put in those two spaces depending on what you shoot. But then for the outgoing, we're going to select DaVinci Wide Gamut and then DaVinci Intermediate. So this is what we have coming out of the first node. And then in the second node, we'll be taking this color space that we created, DaVinci Wide Gamut, and transforming it into Rec 709. So how we do that is in the input drop-down menus, we're going to go DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate, because that's what we have coming out of this first node. And then for the outgoing nodes, we are going to go down to Rec 709 and then Rec 709A. Now, as you can see, this has dramatically changed how our footage looks. And obviously it looks kind of weird because I filmed the entire video using a blue light. If you were using regular lighting, this would look relatively normal. This step is basically to take your desaturated, low contrast raw footage and convert it into something that's more similar to what you see with the human eye. And then after that, you do the actual color grading, which is editing it to reflect the color space and the artistic vision that you have. And it is this color space here that we'll be grading. But before I do that, I add another subtle effect that I really think added to the look of my Mandela Catalogue video. As I've said many times at this point, I was taking a lot of visual inspiration from The Lighthouse when making this video. And as I've also said, that movie was shot on film, and so I wanted to recreate the film look in this picture, which I shot obviously on a digital camera. And there are many ways that you can do this. One of those ways is to find a nice film grain overlay on the internet and overlay that on your actual video. Another way is to apply a film grain effect. DaVinci does have a film grain effect, but I do believe that their film grain effect is in the paid version of DaVinci, so just know that going in. But then there is a third option that I ended up doing, one that is not financially responsible at all, but I think is very cool and something I will be using more of in the future. See, about a year ago, I discovered a plugin for DaVinci and Premiere called Dehancer. And what that is it's an extremely customizable film emulator, and it does it very well. And by customizable, I really mean it. You can choose from a variety of film stocks that you want to imitate, and once you've chosen a film stock, you can customize it down to the halation, the grain, and various other effects that occurred in film footage. And again, I'm not sponsored by them. They're not paying me to say anything about them. I just think that their product is very interesting, and I've really loved experimenting with it. Now, there are a few different ways you can make your footage black and white. You can go over into this menu and just check monochrome, and it'll make your footage black and white. Or you can go to this menu here and just take your saturation down to 0%, and that will obviously have the same effect. But what I did for this video specifically is I added the Dehancer plugin and selected a black and white film stock. So I'm just going to add another node here. And then at the very bottom of these effects, I have the Dehancer plugin, which I will put in here. And this is the drop-down menu where you select what kind of film stock you want. And for my Mandela Catalogue video, I specifically used the Ilford XP2 Super 400 look. And under film grain, I selected an ISO of 250. That's actually the default for the effect. But if you want to have more grain in your picture, you'll just want to make the ISO value higher. So, for example, you could go up to 500, and there would be much more grain in your picture. I didn't really edit any of the other effects in this plugin because I didn't want the picture to be too distracting. That's another reason why I didn't add any VHS effects until the very end of the video. I just felt that too many effects would take you out of it. Although I did enable a little bit of halation just to really bring out the vintage look that was already started with the vintage lens. Now, I added this film emulation plugin onto a final node, but I did have a third unedited node at this point, and this is the node that I applied all of my other color grading to. Any adjustments I made to the picture, anything that I wasn't fully satisfied with, I changed in this third node. And the main adjustment that I did to this node, beyond the effects that I've already done at this point, is just fixing the contrast. To really get the Mandela Catalogue effect, I wanted the dark tones to be really crushed down and dark, but I also wanted the light tones to be not fully blown out, but definitely lighter than they were coming across initially. And so the light tones were peaking at around 768 on this little graph here at the bottom, whereas the dark tones are crushing into the 0 territory. And that's pretty much what I did in terms of color grading for the video. But of course, the last thing I did at the very end of the video was I did start incorporating VHS assets. And again, there's a couple different ways to do this. The free way is to find some really nice VHS assets online and overlay them on your footage. I have done this in the past and it works really well. But on the paid version of DaVinci Resolve, there's this little effect here called analog damage. This is a very versatile VHS effect that can mimic analog video footage from different decades, and even in varying degrees of degradation, because as we know, as VHS footage gets older, it physically starts to degrade. And so for the end sequence of my Mandela Catalogue video, I applied this effect, and in this drop-down menu here, I chose the old VHS effect. Now, I did refine the settings a little more following a YouTube tutorial by a guy named Baddington, who is very famous online for doing remakes of the old Squimpus McGrimpus FNAF VHS tapes. And he has a great tutorial on his channel on doing VHS effects both for free and using effects in DaVinci Resolve. And I'm pretty sure even the VHS assets that I've been using up until this point came from him. So huge shout out to Baddington. He really made all of the analog stuff I've ever done possible. Another asset that I used in this video was the VHS font that you see throughout the video, and this did not come with any of the softwares that I've used up until this point. The font is called Kindly Rewind, and it is available for free for use in personal and commercial projects. So shout out to users Stuff on Your Thing for creating this font and making it available for people like me to use in my silly little videos. And then of course, we have the Uncanny House in the style of the Mandela Catalogue. And this was insanely fun to edit. The grass and the house are still images that I put together in Photoshop, and I then underneath that put time-lapse footage of clouds passing overhead. And having the house as a PNG file allowed me to easily put the red text of Gabriel kind of overlapping but going underneath the house. I think this one small trick really sealed the deal and put me inside the universe of the Mandela Catalogue. And the last thing that I wanted to mention for those who are interested is how I got the voice of Gabriel in my video. See, I've actually known about this trick for a while, but now I finally had an excuse to use it in a real video. See, there is a website called fasthub.net, which I have been using to make Gabriel say whatever I needed him to. And how you do that, it's a simple text-to-speech website that has various voices, but what I do to get the voice of Gabriel is under the voice type here, you just scroll down to whisper, and that's it. It legitimately just sounds like Gabriel. You type in whatever you want up here, and then download it as an MP3 file. And with that, that's the entire story that went into making what is arguably my greatest video yet, and that is my Halloween special on the Mandela Catalogue. But the story isn't over yet, because of course on October 30th, the date that that video went up, Alex also dropped Unravelling Part 2, which is now the most recent entry in the Mandela Catalogue. And I wanted to use this opportunity to quickly talk about the latest entry in the series, adding it to my coverage of the series as a whole. And so let's get into that real quick. The video starts with a tape made by Mandela Tech regarding recursive VHS degradation. VHS tapes, of course, being an analog format, the more copies of that tape that you make, the more degraded the copies will be. However, whoever is making this tape is discussing a new type of degradation they have discovered, where the degradation of the tape is caused by some external force. And so now the person resolves to record him documenting this phenomena. We then see this employee sitting in front of a CRT television watching the Easter tape I talked about in my main video. This person is played by Alex Kister, so we can reasonably assume that this is Dave Lee, the owner of Mandela Tech. So obviously this takes place sometime before he was brutally murdered by Gabriel. And so to show this process, he copies a tape that he was sent, this being the Easter clips tape, then he copies that copy onto another VHS tape, and then copies that copy in turn. Seeing Dave's thoughts on the screen, we hear that it was a quiet night at work, but his intuition tells him otherwise. And the last time that intuition was mentioned in the series, it was when Gabriel was influencing the thoughts of Thatcher Davis. So this is probably bad, and definitely worth keeping in mind. And now Dave records himself playing these tapes and the progressive copies that he made. And the original tape plays out exactly how it's supposed to, the typical resurrection narrative of Jesus.
Look!
And the first copy of the tape has a very normal amount of degradation to it, considering that this is a copy of an original VHS tape. And then the second that the show cuts to the angel sitting underneath a tree, the tape experiences interference. The cartoon resumes as normal, but after the tape is finished, Dave hears a knock. After looking around for a minute, he inserts the tape that is his second copy. And as expected, this tape is heavily distorted. The video picks up as the women are walking to the tomb. And as the scene is playing out, a shot of the door from the T-Morel commercial is briefly shown on screen. And then later on, it shows a shot of St. Gabriel Church as well. This is what is meant by the tapes being degraded by an external force, because obviously these pictures are not native to the original tape, but were inserted by some conscious force. Dave then hears another noise, and this time he shines his flashlight out the window, and when he does, he sees the hanging body of Lynn Murray. The Mandela Catalogue wiki says that this is the legs of an alternate, but this image is way too similar to past images of Lynn Murray to be anything else in my mind. Dave, seemingly unaffected by this horrific vision, just puts in the next tape. This final copy is almost completely destroyed. All we see are glimpses of images. The first is the angel under the tree, but this time his face is censored. Then there's the three women, but this time they're in black and white. Then Mary Magdalene enters the tomb, and we see it exactly how it happened in the Easter Clips video from Genesis Apocryphon. The tape then makes a sound very similar to a scream, and then seems to break entirely. And slowly, as it's scrolling, text appears saying, "All gray, all dark, all gone." Now this immediately elicits memories of Unravelling Part 1 in the TikTok where a voice is heard saying all dark, all gone. We don't know what all gray, all dark, all gone means at this point, just so you know. At least I don't know. And this time there is an even more aggressive knock at Dave's window. And when he turns, Lynn Murray is still there, but something else is outside the window too. A massive dark shape lowering itself into view. The footage cuts out, but when it comes back, an alternate is staring down at Dave. There's no color anymore. The world is all gray, all dark, and all gone. And that is the conclusion of Unravelling Part 2, meaning I have covered the entirety of the Mandela Catalogue up until this point. This video deals a lot with Dave Lee's role in the unraveling of this world without spelling it out for you. See, in the comments section of my Halloween special on the Mandela Catalogue video, I had a commenter point out something that I hadn't even considered up until that point. And that is the idea that what if Dave Lee from Mandela Attack is the real Mandela Prophet? And the more I thought about this, the more that it made sense. All of Dave Lee's actions that we've seen, whether consciously or unconsciously, have aided the alternates in some way. The creation of Face Studio 2, making a tourist attraction out of a CRT television, which is known to be dangerous in this universe. And of course, the creation of this tape that we just watched. In his mind, he was just documenting this phenomena where an external force was interfering with analog tapes. But in reality, what he's doing is he's giving the alternates another way of manifesting in the real world and reaching more people. And Dave Lee is now fully aware that the alternates are watching him, but is continuing to do what he's doing, which makes him seem very guilty. It definitely is starting to seem like he knows what he's doing. And then, having been deceived by Gabriel, he is discarded once his purpose is fulfilled. And this is another minor theory on top of the one I'll be talking about in a little bit, but this could be Dave Lee's biblical character parallel. See, I talked about this in the main video, but Alex likes to give the characters of the Mandela Catalogue these biblical names that foreshadow their actions or their role in the greater series. And my theory is that Dave Lee could potentially be named Dave or David after King David from the Bible. His actions don't really mirror the biblical David at all, but that David in the Old Testament was known as being a man after God's own heart, meaning that he was fiercely loyal to God and always sought to follow his instructions, except for a couple instances, but that's not important. And if the false Gabriel is the savior of this universe, then Dave might be the man after Gabriel's own heart. Because every action he's taken, whether he knows it or not, has fallen right in line with the will of Gabriel. And this video also spells out how the alternates are able to corrupt VHS tapes. See, we know that they exist on different spectrums, which allows them to interfere with analog technology. But now we also know how they can corrupt VHS tapes. And they do this while in the process of people recording or copying VHS tapes by interfering with the analog technology in some way. And this can allow them to either manifest or to communicate forbidden knowledge, as we saw with Easter clips and Overthrown. And now, having talked about the entirety of the Mandela Catalogue, as well as giving some of my theories both now and in the last video, I wanted to talk about one final theory, one I didn't really fully register until I was editing my Halloween video. And that is the theory that we have seen Gabriel more times than we are fully aware of. It doesn't really have any lore implications for the greater series, I just haven't seen any other people make this connection. Maybe they have and I just haven't seen it, but I'm gonna say it right here and now. You see, in the biblical cartoon in Volume 5, we got this one shot of the angel Gabriel in a very distorted state, specifically with his neck extended and his head curving back upside down. And after a while of thinking about it, I realized that I've seen this image in the Mandela Catalogue before. Not the specific image, but just the silhouette. And the first instance of this was an exhibition. Mark Heathcliff had been paranoid for some time, thinking that something was following him, or even more horrifyingly, was always with him wherever he went. And to showcase this, he was constantly recording photos and video, documenting him in his house, as well as going around town, most often to the church. And in one of these images, for a brief moment, we see a figure silhouetted in the window. One with a stretched out neck with its head turned upside down. If the clips in exhibition are shown in chronological order, then this scene would have taken place after the alternate manifested in his TV. An alternate which the community largely agrees is the intruder, and I'm inclined to agree with that. Mark survived this encounter, likely fleeing the house afterwards. And when he turned back and looked through the window of his house, he saw the devil staring back at him. Either that or this photo was taken by a random passerby and Mark's house was infiltrated and Mark was communicated with directly by Gabriel. And then there's one final instance that I can also think of, and that is in Volume 2. At this point, Jonah has deserted Adam, who is now in the basement communicating with the alternates. And in that process, standing in front of a TV, we see the image of an upside-down face. Both I and the Mandela Catalogue wiki theorized that this was the face of a woman, most likely Lynn Murray. But the longer I stared at this face, especially upside down, the less human it looked. I believe that this could possibly be another appearance of the angel Gabriel, in a similar position to that in Exhibition and in Volume 5. Because as Adam confessed to Thatcher Davis, that night he was communicated with by God, and Adam most likely thinks that Gabriel is God. And so that's my final theory about the Mandela Catalogue. It doesn't really have implications for the lore, but I just think it fits and it would be really cool. And that is also the end of this video, wrapping up my series on the Mandela Catalogue, as well as talking about the making of my Halloween special. And if you have questions about any part of the process that I may have glossed over or missed, you can feel free to ask them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer. In terms of videos that I've done on my channel, excluding short films, this is easily my favorite video that I've ever made. And including short films even, it's probably top 3. And I really wanted to share with you all the story of all the little things that made this possible. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank you so much for all of the love on my Halloween video. I've seen so many amazing comments from people discovering the channel for the first time, as well as from returning viewers, and it's amazing to see you all, and I'm glad you appreciated the video. And hopefully you enjoyed this video as well. See, me personally, I love hearing aspects about a production and all of the little tricks that went into making it. And so I loved doing this kind of a video as like a behind the scenes, pulling back the curtain and showing you all what went into making one of my greatest videos I've ever made. And also a little peek into the insane amount of work that went into this video. This was 2 months in the making. And it was a lot of work, but at the end of the day, I love making these kinds of videos. I just love making videos in general. And so it was worth all of that effort, easily. I love filmmaking and I love making video analyses for you all. And I thought that this was an amazing marriage of the two things, as well as my love for photography. Getting to shoot this video using vintage lenses was an itch I didn't even know I had to scratch. If you are interested in my photography, I do have an account on Instagram that you can follow. I'll link it in the description. And I definitely won't be going all out like this too often because, man, that was a lot, but it was amazing. And I'd love to do something like this in the future where I just go all out on one video, especially for Halloween. A video like this and a holiday like this, I really wanted to fully commit to the aesthetic that Alex initially created. And of course, a huge thank you to the patrons. I don't know whether you're going to be on this side or this side for this video because my head's kind of in the middle. But Sean, Happy the Knife, RD, Snowy, thank you so much for supporting me, for allowing me to take these long breaks where I work 2 months on one video. It means the most that you're still here, you're still supporting me, and thank you for that. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again hopefully soon for another video. What's that gonna be? No idea. I've started writing a script. I don't know if I'm gonna actually make the video, but if I do end up making it, it's something very different from anything I've done this far. But I hope you're excited for whatever I make next, because I know that I am. And cut.